DAW controllers. They come in all different shapes and sizes, different brands. Now, a DAW controller falls in the category of nice to have. I certainly don't think it's integral in building a home studio, but a DAW controller has the potential to really elevate your home studio experience. But are they right for you? So what I've decided to do is I've gone through 4 years of comments on the various DAW controller videos that I already have here on my channel, and I've assembled my master pros and cons list to help you decide if a DAW controller is right for you. And remember, if you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. All right, let's get started. All right, so let's get into this. So the way I've designed this is I'm going to list my pros and I'm going to counter every pro with a con. We want to keep this balanced, and also just keeping in mind that we all have different needs, right? So I'm going to try and balance this as much as possible and give you as much perspective as I can. So the first on my list is the experience, and definitely a pro for me. I'll remember when I got my first QCon Pro, just having a mixer in the center of my desk, it just brought that first feeling of a professional studio into my home studio, where you can maybe take off the home and just call it a studio. I mean, having a mixer there, isn't that the most iconic image of a studio? You've got your console in the center of the room and you've got your speaker monitors, and it feels like a studio. So definitely the experience of having that console or some kind of mixer at the center of your desk was a real positive experience for me. And I know that's the case for many who do get a DAW controller for the first time. Now, I want to counter that with the con, and that really comes down to expectations. Now, these are MIDI devices and then they can be programmed to do many different things. I'm going to get into some specifics in a second, but if your expectation is that it's going to do everything well, then that experience might not be so positive for you. There's some things that these DAW controllers do exceptionally well, and there's some things that they don't do well. And I've got a big one, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the experience really of having a mixer at the center of your desk is a really, really positive one. But if your expectations is that it's going to do everything for you, I think your experience is going to be less than positive. All right, the next one on my list is easy access to the basic DAW functions. I'm talking transport controls, record, play, stop, mute, solo, track selectors, things like that. Now, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a guitar player. Often when I'm recording, and if you're like me and you're recording by yourself, having easy access to those functions really helps. Now, I don't normally sit this way when I'm recording because my amps are over here. Often I'm tweaking the amps and, adjusting the volume. So it'll be more something like this, where I'll tweak my amps, get the settings right. But then I've got transport controls right here. I can work with my left hand, my right hand. It's really, really great access. And I found that this way I can be in a comfortable position, and it comes down to the performance that I'm trying to record. And for me, that's the most important thing. But the other side to this coin, we're not all guitar players or bass players. I mean, we've got keyboard players out there. Depending on the instrument that you play, this workflow might be a lot different for you. And I can think of keyboard players where normally you're going to have your main keyboard in front of you. I know keyboard players, you got racks and stuff along the side, but often I've seen many of you will have your main keyboard here. If you're writing or laying down some tracks, it's just having everything right here. The DAW controller might get in the way where you're going to have to move it. Maybe you have to customize your desk, maybe make a second level. I've seen keyboard players obviously with a big tray underneath, but where does your keyboard and mouse go? So you have to think about it. How do you normally work? How do you feel most comfortable in laying down your tracks? And is the DAW controller going to work well within that workflow? Because you may find you're going to have to change that workflow a little bit and make that work. And that might not work best for the particular instrument that you play. So definitely something to think about. So my next point really relates to the type of DAW controller that you may be considering. We've got really two main types in terms of the faders. We've got motorized faders and we have ones without motorized faders. Now, motorized faders, big, big, big plus. And the reason is that you have automatic recall. Now, a DAW controller, even if you only have even a single channel DAW controller or even an 8-channel DAW controller, you can have 200-300 tracks in your projects and it follows along in banks of 8. And I think 8 is a good number because if you got 2 hands on the mix, you can get a lot done with one controller. And just using the bank buttons, you can move in steps of 8 or 10 tracks at a time. And the DAW controller follows along. So whatever levels are set in your DAW will be mimicked here in the DAW controller. Big, big, big plus. Gives you good visual. You can see what's going on, and it's always following you no matter where you are. You can even touch any tracks in the DAW, and it will locate right on the DAW controller. So that's really, really great. Now, big con, if you're looking at a DAW controller without motorized faders, they're not able to follow along. Now, my understanding how they work is that if, let's say, your fader's below the actual level in the DAW, it won't do anything until they meet, and then at that point, you take control of that level and you're adjusting it in the DAW. Again, if you use one of those and you want to correct me, please do in the comments. Personally, I think I'd get lost. I don't think it would be as efficient and not really the best way to work, in my opinion. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, it would really help if you could like, subscribe, ring that bell, perhaps leaving me a comment. It all helps the channel, and I really appreciate that. All right, let's get back to the video. All right, the next one is a big one, and I think one of the biggest pros to get a DAW controller and one of the biggest misconceptions and reasons why you might be frustrated. So let's start with the pro, getting your hands on the mix. I honestly love the experience. You can just kick back, you can grab the faders, move things around, mix with your ears. You know, we get a lot of visual feedback from our DAWs, so sometimes it's good even just to turn off the monitor and just have your hands on all those, you know, the basic functions of mixing. Like I said, transport controls, which I've talked about, you know, panning, things like that. It's a really, really positive experience. Now, the flip side to that is plugins. A lot of people ask about manipulating plugins, and I have to say manipulating plugins on a DAW controller, so far, my experience has not been positive. It's been far from. Now, if you're using simple plugins that are very linear in design and you have like 8 or 10 parameters, if you've got one DAW controller, it's controlled by the rotary encoders up here. So you can push them, you can twist them, and you can adjust parameters, and it's pretty good. I can think of basic compressors and things like that. Not bad. It's actually pretty good. Here in Logic, if I hit EQ here in the assignment section, suddenly the channel EQ kicks in. I've got a few points that I can manipulate here with these rotary encoders. It's really, really great. But think about all the plugins out there. I don't rely on stock plugins. Now, if you're using something like Presonus or Avid, you know, and they're integrated into their DAWs, and I'm sure some of their effects are as well, and the plugins and things like that. But what about third-party plugins? I almost never use stock plugins, a few here and there. I got tons of third-party plugins that I like to use, and some of them have a lot of parameters. Now, for example, this Focusrite channel strip from Brainworks, there could be, I don't know, dozens of functions in here. Now, I have a lot of control here, so all of these rotary encoders are now assigned to the plugin. But just looking at sort of the truncated names here, and there's more functions that are displayed here, so I have to like page up and down and trying to find the function. And it doesn't work in reverse. For example, if I click on the, you know, high frequency adjustment here, it doesn't let me know which rotary encoder is controlling it. It's really, really confusing. It's a really slow way to work. Doesn't work at all. So, you know, hands on the mix, transport controls, record functions, panning, absolutely wonderful experience. But plugins just don't really work at all unless you're just using basic plugins, and I assume most of you are not. All right, so a big plus with some DAW controllers, I've got the Icon series here. In fact, these are two different lines. I'm keeping this general. It's not specific to Icon, but some DAW controllers are expandable. So if you're looking to get into something large like this or even bigger, some of the limitations that used to be in place, I think, are relaxed a bit. I mean, I know you can do at least 8 fader controllers. I think you can even go more. People have been testing it depending on the operating system and the DAW you're using. But I think you'll get at least 6 of them in there, if not more. So they're expandable. So you can invest in your first one, then you can buy an extender, then you can buy another extender. Like I said, in this case, I'm using completely 2 different lines, but they actually work together as one big DAW controller. So if you're looking to grow your studio and have that big console in the middle of your room, that certain product lines, and I definitely would check which ones. I know Icon can, and, you know, I know Mackie can. So you can expand those as your studio grows. Now, the obvious downside to that is it takes up a lot of space. If your desire is to have something like this, then definitely you have to plan for it. You know, you got to have a plan in place. You got to have the real estate on your desk, and really the desire to have something this big on your desk. And I'm not going to lie, because I don't use these all the time. And often, you know, I'll come in here, I've got my iPad or my keys, and, you know, if you just want to throw it on the desk, I actually have no desk space here. This is consuming almost all of the desk space. So they definitely take up a lot of room in this digital age where we can be a lot more efficient with our space, you know, run everything out of the box. It's a bit of an investment of real estate to get something like this to work in your studio. You're going to have to really, really want this, because you are going to make some sacrifices in terms of free space and just places to put things, you know, a glass of water or something. They kind of get in the way sometimes. So definitely something to think about. One thing I continually find amazing about DAW controllers is that the integration with software, and to know that a lot of those functions that we normally control with a mouse are sitting right here on our desktop. And if you've got all the functions that you need right here, let's specifically talk about the faders, transport controls, and things that I've mentioned. It's just wonderful to have that integration, to think that software functionality can exist here on the desktop. And that's definitely a big, big plus. But the downside to that is that integration from DAW to DAW is inconsistent. And sometimes, again, that expectation that everything is going to work the way you want it. Now, some of the limitations are not due to the controllers themselves. And this is actually an important thing to understand. There's a protocol that connects these devices to software. You know, there's Mackie, there's Huey. These are software protocols that allow these physical devices to communicate with the software. Now, the software has to be able to communicate with those protocols, right? Think of them as little handshakes, little wires that are connecting this button to that function in the DAW. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't work. And one example I'll give you, actually this QCon Pro X, they have this second screen here. Now, it doesn't work in Logic. Now, it's not because the DAW controller is not good. It's because Apple is not providing that functionality to send information to the second screen. It just doesn't exist. So this definitely works well in other DAWs. And fortunately, I don't have the full list in front of me, but to know that some DAWs can take advantage of this second screen and some can't. And I've heard some DAWs can't access the master control fader, and people are criticizing the DAW controller, but often that's a limitation of the software. There just isn't the device to connect those two things, because these controllers, at least the universal ones, rely on a protocol to communicate with the software, and the software has to be able to communicate with the protocol or everything breaks down. Now, there are DAW controllers that are designed specifically for specific DAWs. Think about Personas. They make their own controllers. Avid, same thing. There'll be tighter integration, but that's not going to apply across the board. I've already mentioned plugins. That's not going to work so well in that case. So the limitations that you're going to find is the inconsistency in integration. You're going to find some things work better on some DAWs than others. And the limitations really are the protocols in place that allow these devices to communicate with the software. So for my last pro, I want to take everything and wrap it in a big bow. If you've got everything that you need, things that you're looking for to really create an efficient workflow, have lots of fun, have good access to those functions, a DAW controller is going to be a pleasurable experience. It really is. Like I said, you've got the mixing, you've got trimming and panning, and all the function controls, transport controls. If that's what you're looking to do and everything that you need is here, you're going to have a really, really positive experience. Now, the downside to that is if your expectations are different, and I've fielded enough questions about this to know that a lot of people are disappointed because the expectation that they can manipulate their plugins just like butter, it's not the case. Or they have a very specific way to work that's maybe unique to them. I had someone ask me questions. They wanted to use this as a musical instrument and still be able to mix and do automation and all these other things. It was just really high expectations of the device itself, and I think that was unrealistic. So if your expectations are in check and everything you need is right here, you're going to have a really, really positive experience. But if you're looking to really customize your workflow, I mean, these are highly customizable, but it's going to take time to do that. Plus, I think it's going to slow you down. So be prepared for some downtime, because you ain't going to just jump right in and just start mixing and know where everything is. So really positive experience if everything that you need is there. But if you're a tweaker and you're really trying to create something that maybe it wasn't really designed to do, unfortunately, I think your experience is not going to be a positive one. So lastly, I've got a bonus point here, and it's not really a pro or a con, but it's something to think about, and that's longevity. I don't know how long these things are going to last. Now, my first QCon Pro, I've had it for about 4 years. I've moved on to these newer ones, but I've checked it. It still works like the day I bought it. This QCon Pro G2 is, I think, 2.5, 3 years old. This one's, a year and a half old. Everything's working as the day I bought it. Now, they are digital devices with physical and moving parts on them, wear and tear, things like that. I don't know how long they're going to last. The way I look at it, I put these in the category of a computer. When I buy a computer, I don't expect that it's going to last forever. Now, these things can do firmware updates, and hopefully they can stay ahead of OS updates and DAW updates and things like that, so they can stay current for a long time. Like I said, 4 years and going for my first one. But I'm not expecting these things to last forever. So it really comes down to your investment and how much that investment is worth to you. And if you're going to spend $600, $700, $800 on a controller, are you expecting that it's going to last forever? My guess is that it won't. At some point, it's going to expire. There's going to be an incompatibility issue. Maybe some parts will break. These aren't like standard equipment where there's repair shops. Your music store can probably fix it. I don't know what the infrastructure is in place to repair different DAW controllers from different manufacturers. I really don't know. So I think, if you're investing in a DAW controller, just understand that it's probably not going to last forever. And if you can get a good 4 or 5 years out of it, just like a computer, and perhaps you're going to have to invest again. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll last for 10, 15 years. I don't know. Time will tell. But definitely something to think about. I wouldn't put all your money in a controller hoping that it's going to last forever, because it's possible that it just won't. Well, there are my pros and cons for DAW controllers. Wondering if that helped you out. Have you decided to get one, or perhaps you're just going to leave it alone for now? Maybe there's some points that I missed. Well, let me know in the comments. I would love to read those. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. If you want to do a deeper dive with me, I'm on Patreon. I have affiliate links. It all goes to helping this channel, and I really appreciate it. But the most important thing is to check out another video. I've got one waiting for you right here. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video.